WisikyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of American in Germany. Today I'm in Ireland together with
Kevin. How are you?
Kevin from what distillery are we at? Look at his shirt.
At Tullamore Distillery in the middle of Ireland. So the closest distillery right now, I think, to the origins of whiskey.
Oh, very, very good. Now tell me a little bit about the history of this distillery and this brand.
The brand is, I guess it began in 1829. So you start to think that, okay, this brand is 58 years older than Glenfiddich, a brand that we already associate as being steeped in history. We are the closest distillery living to Clonmacnoise, which to me would be the first origin of whiskey. The Annals of Clonmacnoise, 1405, predating the Red Book of Orrery, 1494. You know, this is where it began. To think there's whiskey connoisseurs in Japan right now sipping on whiskey, and it's an evolution of monks getting on with an evolution of beer. So our story starts in 1829 with Michael Malloy, a gentleman who works here, and the distillery passes through many people while it's here. It goes through the hands of Bernard Daly, his son. A lot of guys maybe were less interested in the whiskey, and thankfully Daniel Williams came along. He was 14 years old, worked at the distillery, ran it when he was 25. We don't hire 14-year-olds anymore, just for legal reasons.
Legal reasons, that's very, very good.
Yeah, it was 16-year-olds. They have much better spinal cord development. It's really helping production right now. So that's allowed us to build a new distillery here in Tullamore. Now, there's a bit of a gap there. From the Williams taking it on, the distillery went on, was making whiskey in Tullamore since up until 1954. Right. Then the distillery closed. They had enough stock to keep them up until about 58, 59. Then there's a bit of like a questionable era. We don't know what happened. Frank Riley, one of the Powers holders, married into the Williams family, Teresa Williams. A little bit of pillow talk. It sometimes happens after a little bit of whiskey. And what seems to have happened is that the Powers absorbed the Williams company. They start to produce Tullamore in Powers in Johns Lane. Some of the old crocks that we have, I'll bring up some up if I can find the old ceramic crocks, reference 1791, which would be the Powers establishment date. So some of the old labels, I remember Whiskey Geeks writing to me like 5 years ago going, what the hell, what's this 1791?
Tell me, how does that work out?
I was like, I don't know. So I had to go ask and find out. And I talked to some of the family. And it was really cool to find that history. Since 1975, it was made in Middleton and Cork, a multi-complex distillery. 2014, we came home to Tullamore. We put 100 million into a distillery on a bog in the Midlands. We probably shouldn't have done it, but we did it. Here we are. And it's cool to be back. I started with this company 6 years ago, and it's great to see that transition. When I was at the very beginning starting, the whiskey distillery was just coming en route, and now to see it, you know, with liquid coming out the other end, really, we're pretty much there. That's pretty exciting.
I think we have the XO in here. I heard a little bit of the new grain might actually be from that distillery. Is that a rumor, or could you confirm that?
Unfortunately, that is just a rumor. It's not true. The XO is one of the ones that we do the finishing with the rum at the distillery, the blending, the bottling. So in that sense, it comes from the distillery, but the aged whiskey would not be from the new distillery yet. That will come in time.
Exactly. All right, very good. Now, I mentioned one of the brands you have. You have the XO, which is a very interesting rum finish. What other brands, what other types of bottlings do you have here?
Tullamore is quite a big range. It depends where you are in the world and the market. So we have, let's
imagine we're in Europe, specifically Ireland.
Okay, so in Ireland we sort of go from the original, then you'll have a 12-year-old, which is like the big brother, higher pot still content, a little bit more Oloroso sherry. Then we jump up to a 15-year-old rum cask from Trinidad. It's also a triple blend, triple distilled, triple matured. We call that the trilogy.
Okay, keep on going, then talk about the triple in a moment. That's an important factor.
Cool. Then we've got a 14 and an 18-year-old single malt. Same cask finishing, 4 cask single malt. So sherry, port, bourbon, and Madeira. 41.3%, hipster proof, unnecessarily specific, that's the truth. And that was a single malt that we were able to source. So a great, interesting whiskey. Those are the primaries. Where we are now is the old bonded warehouse. This is where the whiskey would have made its way along the canal to Dublin and been shipped all around Europe and the world. In here, and only here, they have a bottle of the old bonded warehouse, which is just available to sort of appease people who've traveled here and want a whiskey that nowhere else can get. You want to be able to say, I have...
I bought it, by the way. Come on over.
He took all our stock. We have no more left. We have a cider cask that's quite limited, so that was trying...
It's once a year, isn't it?
Yeah, once a year we work with the apple harvest. It's quite painful to make. There's a lot of sediment and filtering. The cost of making it is a lot higher than I think we've calculated in our costs, but it was just something to try, something different. So that was a fun experiment, the cider cask. We talked about XO with the rum. And then in between that, I guess there's occasionally whiskies that, might be a GTR exclusive of that, but that's the primary sort of range that you're going to come across with Tullamore.
Anything we can expect in the future? I always love asking that question and watching him sweat. What can he say? What can he not say?
I got my sweat glands removed, so I don't sweat, just first and foremost, so that's the first thing. What we hope to do, I guess, is probably bring out a pot still, a single pot still from Tullamore. That's what we would like to do, and to showcase that. We've got a lot of experiments going on. I mean, some of them didn't work out, and we've pulled back on them. We've done some beer aging in cask, and we just weren't happy with them. They were good, but as a global whiskey brand that entered whiskey competition, you don't put something forward that's just good. It has to be perceived as a lot better.
Yeah.
So I have stout, cask finish, red ale, IPA, you name it, but a lot of those beer finishes didn't leave overly desirable effects or nothing tremendous.
Right.
So we've pulled back on some of those, and we're focusing on, I guess, more cask innovation, but spirit cuts, playing with mash bills. We're looking back at traditional mash bills that Daniel Williams would have used. So we're experimenting to see, if that's worthwhile. It isn't always, because sometimes they used a grain because it was economic at the time, not because it was a better flavor. So that, it could be availability. There was a horrible crash of barley in the 1850s, and that's why no one used it. And that's why they were sourcing imported rye. So we're going to play around and see what we can come up with. But reimagining what the mash bills could have been, playing with our spirit cuts, which is something we traditionally haven't done, something the Powers brand would have played a lot with. Innovating in cask maturation is quite an easy one to do. And then we've got one or two sort of left field ideas that, we'll keep under wraps until it makes sense to release.
Right,
but I think a pot still will be one of the first things we'll hope to release. And we'll see how that goes.
Right. Now, not everyone understands the DEW. Explain that really quickly. And second of all, that word triple. You've mentioned it, but you really haven't explained it, please.
Okay, so DEW would be Daniel Edmund Williams. He's the founder. He's the guy I talked about. He gets referenced on every bottle. His name is there, his signature. Pretty iconic. He brought electricity, motorized vehicles, and a telephone to Tullamore. So, I don't know who he
Has
called.
nothing to do with the little wetness and moisture from the morning, all right?
We are not, you listen here, we are not owned by Mountain Dew. We have no affiliation with them whatsoever. We're actually going to buy them out in an aggressive, buyout. No, we won't. Maybe. Who knows?
Who knows? Pepsi Cola might like that. You never know.
Exactly.
All right. And the second thing was with the triple. That's a very, very important, unique selling position here.
So I guess the question is triple what? What would you?
What was triple grain, triple cast, triple?
Okay, all of the triples.
Yeah.
Okay. So triple distilled just means it goes through the stills 3 times, as opposed to typically in Scotland, you're seeing it twice, Auchentoshan being a famous exception. I think what we need to remind with Irish whiskey, it doesn't have to be triple distilled. We can bring out a Tullamore and it's double distilled. We haven't, but we could, okay, from the new distillery. It's not in the plans yet, but we could. So typically Irish whiskey is triple distilled, doesn't have to be, important. The second thing, triple blended. That means we're a combination of 3 whiskies, grain, malt, and pot still. Malt is 100% malted barley. The pot still is a mash of 60% malted barley, 40% raw barley. Okay, that's a sort of an iconic sort of style of whiskey that can only be made in Ireland. It came about by avoiding tax when malt taxes were imposed. Who knew good whiskey could be found by avoiding taxes? Not encouraging that at all. And what the last part would be the single grain.
Right.
Single grain is a bit deceptive. There should be an asterisk beside it because it's essentially, in our distillery, we make it from Irish wheat, which is quite different. A lot of places will use maize, French corn, okay, because obviously a lot of whiskies in Ireland are made by Pernod Ricard, French company, they're going to use French corn. We're using Irish wheat, which is a bit fun. We have knowledge of it from some of our sister companies who've already worked with wheat, so we're happy to do that. You can't just use wheat. You have to use a small percentage of malted barley when you're making it, just from a technical.
Enzymes.
Exactly. You need those essentially endogenous enzymes that can be found in your malted barley to kickstart the germination process. If you don't do that, you're going to have viscosity issues, and
It's going to be this clumpy, yucky type of stuff that just clogs everything up.
Have you ever had Weetabix with not enough milk? That's
it.
so cereal. That's not what we want. So those three components form Tullamore. So if we think of a lot of other Irish whiskies, like Bushmills, it will be grain and malt. Kilbeggan will be grain and malt. Teeling will be grain and malt, double distilled. Like the Kilbeggan, Bushmills being triple distilled. Jameson will be grain and pot still. Powers will be grain in a heavier style of pot still. So a lot of whiskies tend to be double blends. Tullamore would be uniquely positioned as a triple blend. Doesn't mean it's better, it's just different. It obviously has a natural complexity. You're adding in another element, but a single malt whiskey that isn't in some of the other whiskies that I mentioned, particularly from Middleton, will allow a fruit flavour to be more prevalent. And a single malt, as a category, it's bigger than the Irish whiskey category as a whole. It's 10 million cases, and we're 9 as a category. So single malt is adorned around the world. So it's great to have that in our whiskey because it's something people connect with as they introduce themselves to quality blends. The last part of the puzzle will be triple cask matured. It just means that the whiskey will go into a series of different casks, typically 3. So ex-sherry, so that's European oak, Quercus robur, coming from the south of Spain. We take it from Galicia, we bring it down to San Luca de Barrameda. They put it in a bodega in Jerez, and you get this beautiful 2-year-old sherry going in, typically Oloroso. You can play around with Manzilla, Mentalado, a variety of other different styles. I'd love to do a little more work with Pedro Jimenez just because I love that sherry. PX is amazing. Some Scottish brands have done some really good stuff. We did experiments with Fino, but Fino doesn't really leave something you really want. Don't do Fino. For anyone starting out, it was a bad idea. For anyone who makes Fino, I'm so sorry. Just drink it on its own. It's a beautiful drink. My mother's alcohol, she loves it. So from there, we jump to the second cask. Okay, white oak coming from the Ozark Mountains. You're talking about Quercus alba. Okay, ex-bourbon casks, beautiful. They can come from a variety of suppliers. You'll see the casings on the cask saying Casey, Calvin Cooperage, or MO, Missouri, Independent Stave Company. Exactly, all these big guys. So we source our casks from there. And then the last one is ex-Irish, because you think of some of the casks as they're matured, they're actually, when we're putting whiskey in again, it's the residue of Tullamore Dew that's been inside the cask before it's being reused. So those are 3, ex-Irish, ex-bourbon, and ex-sherry. So triple distilled, triple blended, triple cask matured, 9 times better.
I'm not really sure about 9 times better, but hey, the brand ambassador said it, therefore it's true, right?
Exactly.
Anything else?
Opinion you're going to hear today.
Yeah, the most unbiased. Anything I haven't asked you'd like to mention at the end of the interview here?
Oh God, I'm just excited. Keep an eye out. We're going to go with a bit of a face change, a lift with the brand in the next while. We're going to play around with the brand world. Hopefully you'll see Beauty of Blend 2.0. That was an exciting campaign that I think we really wanted to push the boundaries with, about celebrating the cultural blend and the blend that is in whiskies. People don't realize how good some blends are. They're overlooked. I've been at clubs and they said they're single malt clubs, not whiskey clubs.
Compass Box has proved them wrong, and many, many others as well. Absolutely,
and it's just about being more open-minded. And I just encourage people who are into whiskey to be willing to accept that other people drink it different ways, explore it, enjoy it how you like it. I'm going to do an event in a few weeks with mixing, sort of enjoying whiskey every way you can enjoy it. With a cigar, with chocolate, in a cocktail, in a mixed drink, ice water, and you pick your favorite way, and you don't narrow it down and say no, that's not for me, or slap an ice cube out of someone's hand like my granddad would have done. Okay. We'll finish with a toast. Is that cool? Yes, we should. All right. What are we toasting to? We'll say, may the roof above never fall in, and the friends below never fall out. Excellent. An Irish toast. Cheers. Cheers. Well, thank you very much. WisikyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American in Germany, together with Kevin Pigott from the Tullamore Distillery. Thanks a million. Thanks a million. Cool.